Hello, I'm Dr. Tara Palmatier of shrinkformen.com. If you have a question or would like to schedule a session with me, you can reach me at shrinkformen@gmail.com. The topic of this video is blame and rage, what narcissists and borderlines call problem solving. I wrote this article back in 2010, and you can find a link to it below in the video description. Here we go. Have you ever wondered why your abusive wife, husband, girlfriend, boyfriend, or ex blames others, makes excuses, or rages when you question their behavior? Do they often behave like an out-of-control child? Does conflict feel like a pointless, circular losing battle with them, no matter how fact-based and reasonable you are? Does she or he have an emotionally charged comeback for everything you say? Do they make legitimate counter-arguments or just try to push your buttons? When you try to discuss relationship issues, do they pout and say, "Not fair"? Do they take responsibility for their words and actions? Or is nothing ever their fault? Does it seem like they set traps, i.e., put you into no-win situations during arguments? Have you ever wished you could put them in a timeout chair, just like you would a toddler? If so, you're not alone. Believe it or not, several of the questions I just asked were adapted from a parenting article, Child Outbursts: Why Kids Blame, Make Excuses, and Fight When You Challenge Their Behavior, by James Lehman, MSW, on empoweringparents.com. Clients in relationships with narcissists, borderlines, and other emotionally immature personalities often say they feel like they're dealing with a child in an adult's body regarding their spouse, girlfriend, boyfriend, or ex. This is especially true if the individual has a cluster B personality disorder or exhibits traits of these disorders, which include histrionic personality disorder, borderline personality disorder, narcissistic, and antisocial personality disorders. Not all, but many people with these diagnoses or traits are developmentally arrested at an emotionally immature age. They're basically toddlers in adult bodies. Actual children will often blame others when an adult holds them accountable for their bad behavior. It's a natural reaction in kids. Good enough parents teach their children to take responsibility and face the consequences of their actions so they can learn to become responsible, functioning adults. If this developmental milestone isn't reached in childhood, it creates stress and dysfunction in adulthood for everyone involved with the individual. Several clients have noted they see their kids surpassing the disordered partner in terms of maturity, problem solving, logic, and integrity. This isn't unusual in these cases. Professional victimhood or victim playing begins in childhood. I'm going to quote Lehman from the article I mentioned. Very often, children see themselves as the victim, no matter how aggressive or abusive their behavior is. Thinking of themselves this way gives them the ability, in their mind, not to take any responsibility. And if you don't take responsibility, then you won't have to change. Sound familiar? A victim mentality is the result of immature and distorted reasoning or thinking errors in troubled children and adults. Thinking errors allow these individuals to blame others for their behavior, shirk personal responsibility for their actions, and remain as they are, dysfunctional and chronically immature. Their distorted reasoning allows them to disregard how their behavior impacts and hurts others, because also like children, they are self-absorbed and can only think of themselves, their feelings, their pain, It's just all about them. Children and adults with these issues experience others holding them accountable, no matter how gently conveyed, as an attack. Lehman recommends parents who identify these behaviors in their children break the pattern by challenging their distorted thinking, setting boundaries, and enforcing consequences, which is great advice. As a parent, you can make rules, enforce them, and model good problem-solving skills. But what do you do when it's your adult spouse, girlfriend, or boyfriend who's acting out aggressively and abusively? What do you do when they attack you even harder when trying to discuss these issues with them? You can't ground an adult or take away their car keys or credit card. Well, you could, but if the disordered person in question is a woman, then she can claim you're trying to control and abuse her because limiting spending is considered financial abuse by some domestic violence groups. So what do? You disengage, detach, ignore, don't step into the traps, and avoid power struggles. Easier said than done, of course. Okay, the next section is the narcissists or borderlines' problem-solving skills are the problem. To be blunt, these individuals have extremely dysfunctional problem-solving skills, or rather, lack them altogether. For that matter, so do codependents who, instead of effectively resolving conflict, tend to appease, people please, avoid, minimize, and/or ignore problems. Instead of holding themselves accountable for their bad behavior and making positive changes, the disordered shift blame, make excuses, verbally attack, and vilify others and/or become physically violent. Bullying, lying, pouting, throwing tantrums, and changing the subject are not effective problem-solving techniques. Unless one's idea of problem solving is to get the other party to agree with you and then shut up about it. For narcissists, borderlines et al., these are their problem solving techniques. For rational adults, these behaviors are problems in and of themselves. They also compound other issues and are highly destructive to any relationship. There's usually a predictable sequence to how these dysfunctional behaviors play out. For example, you confront your girlfriend with something hurtful she's done, like being rude to your family after a visit. She justifies. I only act like that because you know your family hates me. I wouldn't say those things if they were nicer to me. Translation, it's your family's fault. It's your fault. I take zero responsibility. Stop bothering me. If you persist, she'll then add force and venom. You're not fair. You always blame me when things go wrong. Your family's a bunch of liars. They always give me dirty looks. They hate me. You never stick up for me. You're such a blankety blank. Now you've been warned. Agree with me or face more abusive acting out. In this example, the woman is using aggression and intimidation to get you to back down and leave her alone. This has probably been a highly effective technique she learned at some point in childhood with her parents. If you persist, she may then escalate to the fight or flight response because this type of person perceives criticism as life-threatening. I can't talk with you when you're like this. Then she'll break dishes, slam doors, screw you, and then stomp off to the bedroom to Instagram men are narcissist memes. Victim playing results in relationship problems. When these individuals retreat and give the silent treatment, it usually means they've exhausted their primitive defense mechanisms. They hurt others, break things, and/or withdraw in a misguided effort not to solve problems, but to make the problems disappear. There's a difference between solving problems and disappearing problems, because they don't really disappear. How do adult toddlers get problems to magically disappear? Well, you take the blame, you apologize to them for their bad behavior, and then you shut up and pretend like nothing happened. These are highly dysfunctional, crazy-making, and abusive behaviors. They don't resolve the actual relationship issues. They make them worse. According to Lehman, these behaviors and distorted beliefs are indications of, and I quote, their inability to communicate, their inability to solve problems, and their worldview that they're a victim and it's not fair. If things aren't fair, then the rules about cursing at people or breaking things don't apply to them because it's not their fault. And that lets them off the hook. These kids have a way of thinking that justifies violating other people's boundaries and that sees them as a victim of everything. When you try to interfere with or challenge that kind of thinking, these kids will get more upset, threatening, or destructive. End of quote. Now, Lehman is talking about troubled children, but this also applies to personality disordered people and how they distort their thinking, blame others for everything, and refuse to take responsibility for themselves. You cannot have a healthy, reciprocal adult relationship with someone who does this. You just can't. You can't, because you can never agree to the facts or get to that middle ground where it is possible to resolve conflicts and issues in the relationship. Okay? It's a parent's job to challenge their children's distorted beliefs and hold them accountable for their behaviors. However, it is not your job to reparent your adult spouse, girlfriend, or boyfriend. Even if you want to do so, you're unlikely to be successful. Mental health professionals are unable to do this. What makes you believe that you can? Hint, codependency and repetition compulsion, most likely, which I've discussed in other videos. Teaching skills like personal accountability and empathy to children at the appropriate developmental stages can be challenging. Teaching these skills and qualities to adults is impossible. The best you can hope for is teaching the adults that actions equal consequences. And if they wish to avoid unwanted consequences, they need to rein in the worst of their impulses and behaviors. There's a big difference between doing right because it's right and doing right to avoid the consequences of doing wrong. Okay? Doing right because it's right is an indication of empathy, integrity, ethics. Doing right to avoid the consequences of doing wrong is like the criminal who really, 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 really wants to mug someone, rob them, break into a house, etc., but he doesn't want to go to jail again. And if he could do it and get away with it, he still would. Do you see the difference? For real change to occur, the narcissist or borderline must recognize and own that they are a big part of the problem without making excuses. Without making excuses, without making excuses, without making excuses. Is that clear? They have to acknowledge their issues without making excuses. And then give up their victim mentality. Yeah, good luck. If they won't do this, they will continue to blame you, the world, their parents, the dog, whomever or whatever is the easiest target, and stay developmentally arrested in childhood. These behaviors are barely tolerable in actual children, hence my dogs. However, at least with kids, there's a chance they'll grow out of it with guidance and good enough parenting. These behaviors are intolerable and inexcusable in adults, and there's very little chance an adult with these issues will grow out of it. If only you could put adults in timeout. However, there's no reason why you can't give yourself a timeout in the form of a mental health break, like ending the relationship and seeking support for your codependency issues, for instance. Okay, again, I'm Dr. Tara Palmatier of shrinkformen.com. If you have a question or would like to schedule a session with me, you can reach me at shrinkformen@gmail.com. Thank you for watching and have a good day.